Hey Magic fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check out the link above to my Patreon page. I'm back with a replay of the last round of a Modern League with Soulherder. Opponent is on the play. I feel like that's been the case the majority of the matches this league. And I recognized this name and checked my replays, and it was the opponent on Neobrand. So I am going to be mulliganing hard to find Force of Negation. Fortunately, I got a pretty clunky opening hand anyway that I would have mulliganed, so definitely gonna mulligan here, especially knowing my opponent. And yeah, hit a Force of Negation, so even though I can't play any spells, we're gonna hit some lands, get a Hierarch going. We can path an Allosaurus Rider if they try to go that route. So we're gonna keep this and probably just pitch the Soulherder. We're pretty far from being able to cast that thing. And I think the opponent mulliganed, as these crazy combo decks tend to do. Opponent went down to 5. All right, well, Windswept Teeth right on time. We're going to go get a Temple Garden and run out Noble Hierarch. Temple Garden the choice because we've got our basic island in hand, establishing all 3 colors just between the 2 lands. So once upon a time, I think this is the first match where I actually saw this card played. It might have come up against Infect, I can't remember, but I've been seeing it more and more. I think we did see this against Infect in the earlier round. Opponent found a Gemstone Mine, so they play that and pass. People have been discussing potentially playing this card in Soulherder, and it's really hard to evaluate because, well, without testing, just really hard to evaluate on its face because we need pretty high creature density. If you play 4 Once Upon a Times, that ups our non-creature count like really high. We've got 4 forces, 3 paths, 1 winds, 4 ephemerate, that's 12. If we move up to 16 with Once Upon a Time, you know, what are we going to trim? We can trim a Soulherder, we can trim an Eternal Witness, you can trim something else from around the edges, and then jam 4 Once Upon a Time. You get to play this. It's a great value on your first turn. Look at the top 5 cards. Imagine that you've got, after mulliganing maybe, 1 forest, cast Once Upon a Time for free, or even, I don't know, like 1 island, like we just had. Cast Once Upon a Time, find a forest, cast your Hierarch right on time. If you don't have a 2-drop, cast this, look at the top 5 cards, get a 2-drop, right? It seems like it could be pretty solid. But then I worry about turns 2, 3, 4, 5, when we are hitting our first few land drops and really sort of desperately using every ounce of mana to establish a board presence, hold up ephemerate. Like, we don't want to be digging like this. We don't want to be paying 2 mana to dig on turn 3 or to dig on turn 4. These are critical turns, and it just seems like this could be really clunky. But people should definitely test it. I don't know if it's for me. It's super expensive online. It's like $60 for a playset. I've been having a great time with my list. I've tested many options, like from Jace to Thragtusk to Verdurous Gearhulk, more than one, Muldrifter, just main deck worship, no main deck worship, Remands. I've been through lots and lots of iterations. I'm just going to pass on this one for now. Just seems, again, expensive and potentially clunky, so some of you guys should get on this. Let me know how it feels in the deck. With that said, I am going to carry on. So we're continuing to hit our lands, so the hand is developing beautifully. I can play out this Coiling Oracle because I've got another blue card to pitch. And against these kinds of crazy combo decks, you remember from round 3, we were able to successfully path to exile a Gristlebrand. So I'm just going to leave up path here. There's another Once Upon a Time. Opponent reveals another Gemstone Mine. So they play a Waterlogged Grove. We know that at least one of the 4 cards in their hand is a Gemstone Mine. They crack the Waterlogged Grove. Hand must not be too hot. So get in with the Coiling Oracle. Charming Prince is pretty interesting here in our hand. I think I'm going to run that guy out. He can exile the Coiling Oracle and then just, keep the value going while keeping the Coatl in hand. Pretty interesting here. All I want to do is draw cards, draw more forces, just sort of potentially shut down the opponent even harder. But if I played out the Coatl, I wouldn't be able to cast Force of Negation unless, of course, I drew into another blue card. So play out my white spell, which effectively draws us a card. I've been enjoying Prince. I think that it's a really good card in the deck. All right, so now we can actually hard cast Force of Negation. So good job, Coiling Oracle. Good job, Charming Prince. There's that extra gemstone mine. At this point, the opponent has 5 cards in hand, not doing very much. And since they're not doing much, I can get this Coatl onto the battlefield, as I mentioned. We can now comfortably hard cast this Force of Negation, and then even start buying it back with Eternal Witness. All right, there's another Path. Path, not the best card in the matchup. We could try to Path like Griselbrand if they try to pact that for whatever reason. We could Path it again. Getting in for 4 here. It's not the fastest clock, but somewhat respectable. So I'm going to go for Witness here. It's going to get me back my land and allow me to continue holding up Hardcast Force while continuing to build up board presence. Opponent plays another Gemstone Mine, so clearly they're not drawing too amazingly well. There is a second Force, and we're pretty much sitting pretty at this point. Gonna get in for 6 right now. It's still a 3-turn clock, but not feeling particularly threatened here. I guess I went shields down. I'm not sure. I guess I could have held up double Force here, but instead I'm holding up Force and double Path. Yeah, let's see. I could have potentially held up double Force, I think, on that last turn. But the opponent keeps hitting lands, and particularly Gemstone Mines. So, I can't really brag about winning this game because opponent just seems to be drawing lands. We're going to get in for 6 again. Opponent goes down to 2. Not even going to play this Eternal Witness. This seems pretty locked up. Try to go to combat again. Opponent's probably... Let's see, I think that they tried to gain some life. There's a Nourishing Shoal pitching, I believe, an Autochthan Worm. Yep, Autochthan Worm. You're not going to gain 15 life. I am going to counter that while continuing to leave up counter magic. But yeah, that's going to seal the deal because the opponents don't seem to be able to gain any more life. They're going to take 6, and we got there again, game 1 against Neobrand. Let's go ahead and see how game 2 went. All right, back for game 2 against Neobrand. Opponent's going to be on the play again. So remember, we are very much mulliganing to Force of Negation, or at the very least, Disdainful Stroke. So this hand, Forest, Hierarch, Land, Mulldrifter, draw 2 cards, is not good enough because that gets us 3 looks at the top of the deck. It gets us our next draw step, and it gets us Mulldrifter's 2 cards. But it leaves us with just an Ephemerate, and if we go aggressively like that, we can't Ephemerate the Mulldrifter on turn 2. And in those 3 looks, we have to hit both a Force and a blue card, which chances don't seem too great to me. Which brings up the point that in matchups like this, the London Mulligan rule benefits us as much as it benefits the Neobrand opponent. We get 7 new looks to hit a Force of Negation. So let's go ahead and take those 7 looks. And there it is. A beautiful hand. We've got 3 lands. I think I'll pitch one of the lands, especially since we've got a Hierarch. Probably the Breeding Pool. Turn 1 Forest, Hierarch. Turn 2 Hallowed Fountain, flash in Coatl, and we're sitting pretty. So yeah, pitch the Breeding Pool. I think the opponent mulligan again. Down to 5. And sort of no, I don't know. No pity for these guys. They play these crazy decks. So they do have Chancellor in hand, and they have Allosaurus Rider, and it looks like they're going for it on turn 1, but that puts them down to 0 cards. So sorry, Neobrand opponent. No dice. So they're playing it out, apparently. Let's go Hierarch and see when we can get them to scoop. So they found a land. Don't imagine they're going to want to cycle that Waterlogged Grove anytime soon. go ahead and play out the Coatl now, see what I draw. If it's like a Hierarch, I can just play it again, play another one, but since I didn't, I can just attack. And the opponent scooped at that point. So this has to be one of our best matchups. You just mulligan to force, and they might have a counterspell, but the chances that they have a counterspell or like a Veil of Summer is just as likely as us having 2 counterspells, honestly. So yeah, I was able to finish the league 4-1. I think I got pretty favorable matchups, but we've got game against pretty much the open meta game of Modern. You saw that Dredge was pretty tricky, but if you've got your forces, if you've got your ephemerates, you can block well. If you get a big Soulherder going, it can be really hard for them to deal with. They don't have removal like Fatal Push or Path to Exile. They just have to kill your creatures with Conflagrates. So if you blink creatures enough, Soulherder, if once it becomes a 7/7 or an 8/8, they just don't have enough cards in hand to pitch and kill Soulherder. So we've got game against even decks like Dredge. We've got game, obviously, against these kind of bonkers combo decks. I feel like we're really well situated against Infect. I thought that I was going to get blown out by round 2, in round 2, against this Paradoxical Outcome deck. But again, we've got main deck counterspells, free counterspells. Bring in extra ones from the sideboard. We've got main deck removal with Path. We can recur them with Eternal Witness. We've got a one-sided board wipe with Winds of Abandon. We've got the ultimate stalling card with Worship. Honestly, I just, it's great Magic. It's a lot of fun. It's a little bit like kind of playing eggs or some kind of Cheerios solitaire deck where, we get to play a Coatl and then ephemerate it and draw into another ephemerate, and ephemerate again, draw into an Eternal Witness, get back ephemerate, play Soulherder, blink the Eternal Witness. It's all this fun stuff that we get to do on our side of the table, but it's a really, really interactive deck. Like against Infect, where they're attacking with a Blink Moth, let them go to town, pump that thing up, right? We flash in, single Death Touch flying creature, and they just wasted like 3 cards. It's such a blowout. Infect is set up to be able to counter removal spells. They might play Spell Pierce, they might play Veil of Summer. None of that does anything against Icefang Coatl. So you just flash this thing in, trade with their Blinkmoth Nexus, blow them out, 3-1, 4-1. This guy even draws us a card. It's crazy. Against mid-range, we draw so many cards. We have things like Celestial Purge in the sideboard. The Jund matchup is really solid. The control matchup is actually really fun. You just need to use your counter spells really carefully. You need to kill their planeswalkers with all your creatures. Charming Prince actually adds an interesting element to the blue-white matchup, because if an opponent casts a Supreme Verdict, you can ephemerate a Charming Prince. When Charming Prince gets blinked, you can use its third mode to exile one of our creatures. The best option is to hide away an Eternal Witness, and then at the opponent's end step, after the Supreme Verdict resolves, we can return the Eternal Witness and then get the best thing back from our graveyard. Maybe it's a Soulherder. Maybe it's, Icefang Coatl. Maybe it's an Ephemerate, and we can start looping Eternal Witness. But that's a unique ability that Charming Prince now grants us. All of our blink effects were instantaneous. Charming Prince's ability is more of a flicker ability, or a I guess you call it a flicker ability, right? Where, like Flicker Wisp, it tucks something away until the end step. I had a match against Tron where I was in a pretty dominant position, and the only thing that could beat me would be like a board wipe effect. So like Ugin or All Is Dust. So on my end step with Soulherder, I blinked Charming Prince and then tucked away Eternal Witness. It wasn't going to come back until the opponent's end step. So the opponent ended up playing Ulamog. They exiled 2 of my guys, but then on their end step, Eternal Witness came back. I got a Path from the graveyard, pathed the Ulamog, and attacked for lethal. So Charming Prince, very versatile, a little bit deeper than I think most people understand it is in this deck. It's got some really sweet interactions, helps us against board wipes, helps us maintain pressure when the only out for the opponent is something like a board wipe, by tucking away a creature until their end step. So anyhow, deck feels amazing. Happy to go 4-1. I'm going to jump back into leagues more now instead of just queues. I'm going to start winning more treasure chests so I can start affording to buy more cards. Things like Little Teferi are like 40 ticks. I can't just keep buying new decks and new cards like every day unless I'm winning chests in leagues like this. So thanks very much for joining me, guys. For those of you guys who are here for Merfolk content, I apologize, but this deck is fresh. It's so wide open as far as development goes. I mentioned in one of the videos I'm more than 100 matches deep right now with the deck. I'm finally getting sort of comfortable with it, and it's sort of hard to put it down for the time being. So if you're just looking for Merfolk content, please stay subscribed. You'll get notified when I upload. But for the next few weeks at least, I can't imagine I'm going to be uploading anything other than Soulherder stuff. So again, apologies for that. But for those of you who are enjoying the Soulherder content, keep tuning in because I'll be back with more pretty soon. Please subscribe, check out my Patreon page, leave your comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again, guys. Bye.